Hey guys, I'm at the zebra, and if you're wondering why I'm up here, it's because I tried to run away from my zoo because I was looking to find my population. But due to forces like births and deaths, unfortunately, I'm on the run. And for a whole week, I've been in Nashville, Tennessee before, I was found. And now that's why I'm here in a helicopter. But don't worry, you will learn a little bit more about Section 8.3, which is all about population ecology for AP Biology or college biology. But please don't be like me and try to run away because I was searching density independent factors like droughts, fires, storms, and human disturbances. These humans, you won't believe it down there what I've seen for the last week. But that's okay. Make sure to note the disclaimer listed above or below, and we'll get started in just a second. Hope you enjoy.
Let's take a look at some terms that you're expected to know for AP Biology or college biology before diving into different types of graphs you potentially could see. As you can see in this video here, you can see a group of baboons or apes. These are found in southern Africa, oftentimes in savannas or semi-arid habitats. This is because they're a group of the same species that live in the same area, and therefore we call this a population. When we talk about population size, we use the variable n, and this is the total number of individuals that live in that population. For example, if we say in Arabia, we have 100,000 apes that we can find, that is the individuals that live in that very specific area. There are different factors that can influence population size, including the increase and decrease. One of them is births. For example, new baby baboons can increase the rate. And then, for example, deaths can decrease the rate. We also have outside factors as well that might influence things like immigration, which a group of baboons can walk into a specific area like the Arabia area due to maybe weather issues or natural disasters. In the opposite way, we could think about decrease in individuals leaving, maybe due to the fact that there could have been a natural disaster in that specific area, and that would be termed emigration. These characteristics of population are called to be the way resources are available and species interactions exist. So when we talk about population characteristics, we're talking about density, size, and distribution change due to the availability of resources and species interaction. Think about if certain types of apes have certain type of food, or the fact that trees might be broken down. That's their habitat that's being destroyed. So these species have to find new areas to live. And so genetic makeup also plays a profound impact on populations. For example, we want to think of adaptation. If a ape can live in really warm temperatures that other apes cannot live in, they have a high probability of survival, and these influence population characteristics. Let's talk about population ecology, which is what we're learning in this lesson. This is how we examine the competition, predators, prey relationship, habitat availability that drive the population dynamics. For AP Biology, you're going to use different models, especially for free response questions, to predict growth patterns. And they will be seen in tables and graphs to show different patterns that you might see within certain geographic areas or certain forms of stability. The important thing that you remember is that you're informing how you can use this information for various ways that you would be managing a question for a FRQ or a MCQ, meaning multiple choice or free response question. We could use these species interactions to predict the way the ecosystem can function in the future, as you will be expected to do this with free response questions or multiple choice questions. Let's talk about the factors that are involved in population survival. For the purposes of AP biology, the two main categories are abiotic versus biotic factors. Please note you should review the AP biology playlist, which covers this topic more specifically. But for now, you just need to know abiotic factors as non-living factors and biotic factors as living factors. Now, there are 6 main examples that can be used to describe these factors. First is habitat. I want you to think about a giraffe. A giraffe can only be found in semi-arid savannas or in woodlands located in Africa. They wouldn't really thrive naturally in areas like, say, the Canadian desert or Canadian based areas, not Canadian deserts, I should say, just Canada in general. You wouldn't find them in Canada. That's because the population of giraffes are only sustainable in certain areas where they can continue to live and reproduce. Habitat loss is a key factor that can impact this population. So, for all of a sudden, let's say that this giraffe is going to go through a natural disaster that has all those trees that it depends on die, then more than likely the habitat of that giraffe is not really sustainable for the giraffe and therefore would be less likely to survive in such an area. Let's talk about the second factor, which is climate. Populations are influenced by changes in climate, so changes in temperature, precipitation, extreme weather events. So, for example, if a tiger were to live in an area where it is snowing that once lived in a really warm area, it wouldn't be sustainable because it wouldn't have the resources that it needs to survive. And that's why climate is a key factor. The third factor is resources. Population needs a certain specific resource. This is basically grounded in understanding that you need food, water, oxygen, shelter to basically survive and reproduce. Think about us as human beings. We need certain things to survive. I want you to think about when the global pandemic was happening and how people rushed to the grocery stores to get paper towels or toilet paper because we felt the need to have certain resources readily available to us during these times. Now let's take a look at competition. Competition occurs with all populations in themselves or between species. Think about you as a human being. You might be considered a carnivore who eats things like meats or chicken or other animal-based products. You also might eat other products such as grass, or you might eat lettuce or tomato, just different vegetables. Well, think about that there are other animals out there that also need those same items. For example, we need water. So do these fish over here that need water as well. So we're competing for the same tendencies of items together. At the same time, you can think of various different types of fish. They live in the water themselves, and they live in an area that requires competition. Remember, these fish are not competing in the water and the land, they're competing in the water. So you could have multiple fish competing for the same resources in the same vicinity as well. Let's talk about predation, or the prey-predator relationship. Here you could see a bird or an eagle flying into the water because they're trying to attain a fish to feed either their offspring or they're trying to feed themselves. Predation is a key indicator in which a certain population might prey upon other species for food, and this plays a significant impact on their survival. For example, if this eagle is not able to find a sustainable environment of fish, then it itself won't be able to survive. So it needs that prey to depend on to survive itself. And lastly, there's disease. Remember, during COVID, we were worried about diseases that were coming out and how quickly they were coming out. And this impacted not only ourselves, but populations around us, how we produced certain goods or how we transported them. So as you can see here, based on population survival, these key factors influence who we are, and how other surrounding species relate to us as well.
Welcome to the fascinating world of population ecology, a key topic in AP biology. Imagine a vibrant ecosystem, abundant with diverse species, all striving for survival. At the core of this dynamic is the concept of population. First, consider resources: food, water, oxygen, and shelter. These are essential for any population to thrive. They allow individuals to reproduce and ensure the distribution and growth of species across an ecosystem. Next, think about habitat. A suitable habitat provides not only the space for feeding and breeding, but also necessary protection. However, losing this habitat threatens the persistence of entire populations. Then, there's competition. In the wild, it's a race for limited resources like food, water, and mates. This competition determines who survives and who successfully passes on their genes. Predators also play a crucial role by regulating prey populations. Shifts in predation can lead to population explosions or sharp declines. Disease is another vital factor. Outbreaks can wreak havoc, reducing population sizes by increasing mortality and affecting reproductive health. Lastly, climate influences all ecological interactions. Temperature variations, precipitation changes, or extreme weather events require populations to adapt, migrate, or face decline. Understanding these elements provides insights into how populations sustain themselves and respond to environmental challenges.
Let's talk about population growth rate, and let's take a look at our friend Ed. Ed, our zebra, is now in a zoo, but let's pretend that he is out in his general habitat and he is with his friends or his buddies. And we want to take a look at his population growth rate. When we're taking a look at population growth rate, we're ignoring the fact that zebras can come in and out of the population through immigration or emigration. We're looking at just strictly the zebra population within a given area over a period of time. And that's what population growth is, specifically population growth rate. It is the population growth within a period of time. And this, or the growth rate, is determined on a formula that you will be given, but it's helpful to memorize that it's births minus deaths, which is the population of births within a species and the population of deaths within a species. Let's try to tackle a specific problem to try to see if we can mimic this same type of problem. If you want to go ahead and pause this video, please do so now if you think that you can tackle this problem yourself. Okay, so the problem indicates that in a specific time frame, 2021, that you have sea turtles in a small island. They've recorded the births and the deaths, and they want you to determine the population growth. So in this type of problem, you are given the specific area and a specific time frame, which means that using our formula, we just have dt over dn equals our births minus our deaths, which in this case is switched over to 75 minus 30. With this, we go ahead and calculate this, and we indicate that this is 45, or a total population of 45 within the year 2021. Now let's take a look at another type of problem that is going to be very similar, but has a little bit of difference. Take a moment, and if you want to, please pause this video and try to see if you could tackle this problem yourself. Okay, now that you're done reviewing the problem, let's try to tackle this problem together. They let you know that they're talking about hummingbirds. Specifically, they're letting you know that you're talking about 1,500 hummingbirds. And they let you know that each month it's 1,500 times this idea that you are going ahead and you're taking 450 hatchling birds and you're joining the population where 120 die. So you're expected to figure out what the per capita growth per month is, which seems very complicated, but it's really not. So you're going to take a look at the same exact formula where you have dn over dt, and you're looking at the births times your n, which is your total population, minus D over your total population. Okay, so births, deaths, all over the fraction of your total population. Basically, you're saying your part over your whole for the births minus your part over the whole of your deaths. And remember, you're still using the same formula, but you're just taking into account that there are 1,500 hummingbirds in the host. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this with 1,500 for both my n values. I'm going to have a subtraction symbol in between. I take a look at my birth rate, which is my 450. And then I have my death rate, which is 120. Making sure to place these into the calculator with parentheses, I can calculate it straightforward. But if you have a simple calculator, you would calculate 0.30 and 0.08. Subtract these two, and you attain 0.22. And if they ask you to round, which they did here to the nearest tenth, that's going to be to the first decimal place. So it's 0.2 per month. So these are some problems that you could potentially see in a multiple choice question where you're expected to know how to calculate population growth formula. Let's talk about Ed over here and his ability to prosper in exponential growth. Let's say Ed over here was running around and he found a trail of other zebras. And over time, he had all these food resources, the perfect weather, and no outcome prey or predators, I should say, predators that would come after him, but a unlimited resource of food, which he would be the predator. So in this case, Ed would have benefited with exponential growth, which takes a look at time and population size and assumes that that population, for example, zebras, have unequivocal space, resources, and no competition. So there's basically no constraints. And because of this, the idea is that they will grow really fast over a short period of time. And it formulates this J-shaped curve that exists where you have small growth and then rapid growth really quickly. So that's exponential growth. Now, let's take a look at exponential growth a little bit more with this idea that we could be looking at it comparing certain populations. So, if we were to look at exponential growth comparing two sets of populations, let's take a look at maybe Ed and his friends. What would happen is we would have a specific formula which basically states that dn over dt equals r max times n. And R max is considered the maximum per capita growth rate. So this is just taking a look at the number of offspring produced by each individual per time, and time is usually typically in the terms of 1 year. So what they mean is you're taking a look at the population size again, but you're comparing two different zebras, maybe zebra 1 and zebra 2, and you're taking a look and comparing the growth over the period of time. So for example, usually they have the same J-shaped curve, but maybe one started off a little bit smaller than the other one, and therefore we're taking a look at each individual growth and saying that we want to compare the population growth. N is considered the variable of the population size. So we're taking a look at the number of individuals in each population. So if there is the zebra population in one area and a zebra population in another area, we would take a look at the zebra population in the one area and call that N. Each individual's contribution to growth, or the R max, stays the same no matter how big the population gets. So it's considered a constant. So usually if they give you a problem, they'll let you know that the R max is considered the constant that remains the same. And that's important to note. So let's take a look at how you could see this in a problem itself. Take a moment to pause this video if you need to do so to try to read the problem and then try to attempt to do it yourself. Once you've completed, make sure to unpause the video and then we will tackle this together. Okay, so in this problem, they give you some information. They let you know that there's 862 zebras, including one you know as Ed, and they let you know that the growth rate happens to be 0.05. So they gave you the constant in this case. So remember, dn over dt equals r, I'm going to put m here, that's my m, times n, or n some not some cases. So it's just r times n. And what my r is 0.05. And my herd growth is my n, which is my population growth. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply that together, and that is 862. So basically I have 0.05. I know my handwriting's really bad here. 0.05 times, that's my times, 862, which ends up, if you put that into your calculator, remember you're allowed to use the calculator, 43.1. So that would be the expected increase after 1 year, because we're assuming that when we're looking at that formula, remember, it is 1 year. Now they want to know that population after the end of the year. So remember, this is the value of 1 year, and we already have 862 zebras. So all we would have to do for the new herd size after that 1 year is take the 862. Remember, we're assuming there is no outside factors that is influencing any change. They just have the most perfect conditions. So there's not going to be any deaths or births within that year. So we have 862 plus 43.1, and that's going to give us 905.1. Because you would have to double check in the problem to see if they tell you to round up or round down. If they don't, you can look at your multiple choice options, if it is multiple choice, and place 905. If they tell you to round to the nearest whole number, you'd still have 905, because remember, you can't have 0.1 zebras. But in this case, they don't tell us to round, so we could keep the value the same way. So that's something to note if you're reviewing a problem like this. So now let's tackle the idea of carrying capacity. So carrying capacity is this idea or concept that in fact we have a population size that is at maximum. And this takes into account the environmental conditions that it sustains in this case. So it's not going to be a J curve like exponential growth. Instead, the carrying capacity takes into account certain factors such as energy or water or nutrients or shelter or refuge or space. So this is important to note that carrying capacity takes into account these outside factors. As you can see, there is a J shape starting off like a potential exponential growth. And that's because we consider that the biotic potential, that the life potential continues to grow once we have some sort of environmental resistance, in which the exponential growth that we once had is going to then taper off or go up and down once it reaches the carrying capacity or near that. So for example, let's assume that it reaches a certain point and maybe there's limited food resources. Then it would go back down. And let's say there's a natural disaster. So once it reaches a peak again, it goes back down. So carrying capacity is the start of that J-shaped curve. But then essentially what happens is we take into account the environmental resistance or environmental factors that can come into play that could essentially be abiotic or biotic factors that can influence the outcome. So when we're taking a look at logistic growth, we're talking about the value of N, which is the population size, as it reaches that carrying capacity. So that would be usually the solid line that you see here. And what ends up happening is per capita growth rate tends to decline in reality as it produces an S shape. So you would have like an S shape that produces rather than a J curve. It's called a sigmoidal curve, and that's because in reality we have this other factors that exist that would stop it. And essentially what happens is once it reaches that carrying capacity, which means that you have those outside influences that partake in the behavior of the growth, then essentially what happens is it will slow down. So the S-shaped curve takes into account those natural resources that potentially could see an increase or decrease in behavior. Now, in reality, we have fluctuation of sizes due to population having different issues. So you can see here over the period of time, it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down until it reaches a carrying capacity, and then it sort of overshoots and then tapers off a little bit. So it can fluctuate before it levels off as well, and that exists for reality curves as well. Now let's take a look at logistic growth. Now, if you take a look at exponential growth, remember it overshoots up. And then if you look at logistic growth is going to take into account the reality of the factors, and then you have that S-shaped curve. You need to note the following formula, which now takes into account the population size versus the carrying capacity. So now you have R max times N, but now you have to take the carrying capacity, subtract it with the population size, and divide it by K again, which is the carrying capacity. So that is the new formula if you have some sort of logistic growth. Let's try to tackle the following problem together. Before we get started, please pause the video if you feel like you can solve this problem on your own. Check back around to see if you're in the right space to get the correct answer. Okay, now let's go over some things before we get started. So first we have to identify whether or not it's an exponential growth or a sigmoidal growth or logarithmic growth. And I just want to point out a couple things. The first thing is, if you have an exponential growth, remember exponential is this J shape. If it formulates an S shape, remember that is logarithmic. And I just want to point that out as a difference because you're going to notice that sometimes you'll be given a graph instead. And there's a couple things that I want to remember or note if you are given a graph. First, if you're given a graph, remember K is going to be the point where we also say is the carrying capacity. If you are identifying this in a size, you want to note that. Okay, let's go back and try to identify with the information given where we can plug and chug. Remember, the formula is dN over dt equals your R max times your N, and then you have K minus N over K. The reason why I know that I'm looking for the logarithmic growth is because they're asking for the R max essentially, or the maximum per capita growth rate, and that's affiliated with that logarithmic growth, right? You're looking to see where it's going to peak. Whereas with exponential graphs, you're not going to see that because you have that J shape, so it's never going to really peak. So that's the difference between the two. If they say they're looking for that maximum point, they're looking to see where it ends. That's a sigmoidal graph. That's that logarithmic graph, and therefore you know to utilize that specific formula. So I just wanted to point that out before we plug and chug our values in that formula that we have. So let's identify some things. So first, let's take a look at our value of N. Okay, so N, remember, is going to be your starting point. So in this case, we have 3,000 cells. So that's your population that you currently have. You also note the value of K is going to be what it can hold, its maximum capacity. And so it says that it can hold up to 10,000. So that's going to be our K. Let's also take a look at dN over dt, because remember, we're looking for our M, our max per capita growth rate. So when we're taking a look at dN over dt, we're looking at the difference to compensate, right? So we have 4,500 and we're starting out with 3,000. So what's the leftover we need? So essentially we say 4,500 minus 3,000. And if you plug that into your calculator, you'll get 1,500. Knowing that information, we can plug that back into our formula. So dN over dt is 1,500. We have our Rm. We have our N, which we know is 3,000. We're going to keep that parentheses there. Our K is going to be 10,000 and minus our N, which is 3,000. For the purposes of cleaning this up a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and say that's 7,000. So I'm going to plug that in instead, because with PEMDAS, I know I'm going to take care of that anyway. So it's 7,000 over my original K, which is 10,000. Remember, you can cross out these zeros or you can plug it into your calculator, but it's 7 over 10, which simplifies to 0.7. I just do it quicker that way. It's just a quick and easier way to solve for a problem, especially if you're in a small time crunch, instead of pulling out that calculator there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and tackle this even further by saying, we can divide both sides by 3,000 times 7.7 and 3,000.7. When you go ahead and plug that in, you'll get 1,500 over 2,100, and that's equivalent to 0.714. So your R max, if they don't ask you to round, is 0.714. So that just shows a way that you can solve a problem and how you can determine whether or not it's an exponential graph or a logarithmic graph. Remember, a logarithmic graph is going to have a peak. That's why it's S-shaped. And that's how we know that's what we're solving for. Now let's try to tackle the other concept of limiting factors. So now that we've understand a little bit more about Ed, we understand that he was running, right? And he was running in Tennessee because he was trying to search for something. He could be searching for density independent factors, which is how the growth rate can be affected based on how dense a population is. So same effect as if it's high or low. So these include things like natural disasters or weather. These are factors that basically are independent or can stand alone. So Ed here, if he's on the run, he doesn't need to depend on other animals to play a part. So extreme weather conditions, natural disaster, or human activity can play a part in this. Density dependent factors are factors that affect the growth rate depending on how dense the population is. So basically, the more population that we have, the more limiting factor there is. So things like food. So if other animals are eating a certain type of food that the zebra needs, guess what? Then the zebra will not have access to that. And therefore, that's competition. Predator-prey relationships fall in the same category. Disease, these are all density dependent factors. Think about a disease that you might think of, say something that might be a parasite that goes into the elephant or zebra's body that can affect the zebra because it's its host, right? So that is an example where it's dependent on that population. So limiting factors can be density independent or density dependent, depending on whether or not the growth rate is affected by the population or not the population.
Hi, guys. It's Ed here. I should really be saying divide because unfortunately my journey has come to a close June 2025. And while I might have been found, I hope that you enjoyed this video of understanding population characteristics that I was trying to look for during my adventure. I was trying to look for those food resources. I may or may not have crashed a couple of barbecues trying to search for food. You know, my understanding for resource management has really, really skyrocketed. And now I really understand the importance of conservation. Whether you are trying to understand AP biology today or for the future, make sure you understand the differences between the different types of curves. Hint, hint, for these exams, you'll see a couple of these curves and you'll be expected to know how to assess my life in the present, in the past, and in the future. But for now, let's tail end. Make sure to review this video again so you have a better understanding of section 8.3, population ecology, and review the summary table as necessary. Thank you, guys.
A zebra escaped. We called him Ed. He ran wild for a week, not for fun, but survival. In population ecology, scarce resources force animals to move. The strongest traits help them adapt. But when humans destroy habitats, change the climate, or poach, survival turns into a struggle. Ed's escape, it's nature fighting back.
Hey, Geeking Out on STEM family, guess what? We want you to hit that subscribe button. Why? Because we'll be producing more content just like this for the AP Biology exam and the new digital SAT exam. By subscribing, you'll be getting exclusive, up-to-date tips, tricks, and secrets for both exams. Also, if you're a parent, a teacher, a homeschool instructor, or a student, you might be looking for affordable and exclusive digital products to help improve multiple choice questions, free response questions, or question bank questions related to both the digital SAT or AP Biology exam. We have them here. Make sure to check out our link tree in our bio for curated resources that you won't find anywhere else. These unique resources are designed to help you raise your score. By hitting the subscribe button, the more subscribers we get, by the way, the more videos we can make. So make sure to join our family to ensure that you get a perfect score for both exams.